work. National Zoo opens tomorrow, so a lot of the government is starting up again. In the meantime, with over 80 million monthly visitors, BuzzFeed is on its way to becoming one of the largest sites on the web, and it's building a large political presence as well. Jon Steinberg is the president and COO of BuzzFeed. He joins us here at Post 9. Jon, it's always good to see you. Good morning.
Thanks for having me, Carl.
We're in a moment here because Twitter is expected to start trading in a few weeks. A lot of discussions about their amended S1s, what it means to make money in this space.
Yep.
What are your thoughts right now about where they are?
I'm impressed. I mean, I think the company's doing exceptionally when you look at the core performance metrics right now. 230 million users. They're profitable if you take out the stock-based compensation and the depreciation. There's a lot of non-cash expenses there that everybody's worked up about. And most excitingly, 70% of revenue is from mobile. All native units, all the content-driven social advertising of the future, none of the garbage banners. So, I mean, yeah, it's small. There's a lot get through, but I'm very optimistic on it, just like I was with Facebook before IPO.
You think they can swing to profitability in a quarter?
I think a couple quarters would be my guess, and I like to use the analogy of a barber. You can always cut off more hair. You can't put hair back on. Now is the time for them to spend and invest in R&D. They'll get the profit. They know they have to be profitable in 1 or 2 quarters.
It's one thing, though, to be a good business and have a good business model. That's important for Twitter, but I think for the social media landscape more broadly, there are a lot of people, a lot of actually investors who I talk to around these parts who look at a Twitter and say, you know what, I think it's going to be a little too niche. I'm not necessarily sure I can see my mom on it, my grandmother. In other words, is it going to, even though we all know and understand its utility and how big and important it is it ever going to really cross that threshold that makes it on a Facebook-like scale?
Callie, I think that's a fair criticism. And I think that when you operate these businesses as we do, investors expect everything to be in a linear pattern. But what really happens is you make tweaks, you test things, and you have these big jumps in performance. Just like Facebook jumped 40% mobile revenue in 1 or 2 quarters. Just like YouTube recently announced 75% of monetization is for people choosing to actually watch the commercials. I suspect what you will see with Twitter in a few quarters is the growth will accelerate, much more people will come on in big chunks, or they won't. But it won't necessarily be like that.
Jon, what are you learning in your business at the moment about content and monetizing serious content? I know you're expanding into political coverage, long-form coverage. What can you teach the rest of us about what's working now?
I think one of the things that really blows people's mind the most about BuzzFeed is why do we have hard-hitting news? Why did we break that Glenn Greenwald was leaving The Guardian? Like, we broke that story, Ben Smith, and at the same time have furry cats and animals and web memes. The reality of it is the modern traditional media doesn't care about young people. They run fancy vacations at expensive restaurants adjacent to the politics. We do the hard news, but our leisure content is for young people. 60% of our audience is 18 to 34. You look at the television network viewing audience, late 40s, early 50s. You look at cable, late 50s, 60s, median.
You were very strong in your comments in the break about those that provide content, video content, should set it free.
Yes.
And put it on YouTube.
Yes.
Not have it solely on your own site. What is the reasoning there?
Well,
it's experience of how you're monetizing.
I mean, look, I would love you guys to do it. I talk to your producers all the time. YouTube has 1 billion people a month. It is the cable network. It is Cablevision. It is Comcast. Those companies will become broadband providers. This is the network. We have successfully made money on YouTube doing branded content. We have successfully made money selling into their TrueViews. All the CNBC content, all the network content should be on YouTube and should be monetized there. Nobody wants to go to the CNBC player. Nobody wants to go to the ABC player. They want to go on YouTube.
In fairness, we actually have very good figures for that, but I understand you're making a broader point, and specifically branded content is the way through.
Yes, and I think whatever numbers you have in the CNBC player, I bet if you put more of that content onto YouTube, I think you'd be blown away.
You used to work at Google. I mean, is YouTube just getting more and more powerful? Is that being perhaps undervalued and underappreciated still by the market?
Well, it's funny, David. I mean, I think of it as being their big brand advertising option. I think that everything that the team is doing there under Solar and Robert Kinsel, they're continuing to bring brands, into the tent. The brand reception, you hear the story about the Dove True Beauty campaign, which completely blew up there. There's more and more stories of it. That's where the eyeballs are. New York Times had a report out that 33% of millennials get the majority of their video content online or get no broadcast television anymore. So yes, I think that this is the television for Google.
I'm just curious, you mentioned long form. If you're aiming at a young audience and you're not giving that young audience longer form investigative pieces, aren't you depriving them ultimately of becoming the types of people who in a generation or two will be inclined to read the New York Times and et cetera?
Well, this is a misperception about BuzzFeed. We have 120 reporters now, fully on-staff reporters that come to the office every day, salaried reporters that are covering politics, business, technology. We break day.
Making phone calls, not just trolling the web to redo everybody else's content?
I bet you Ben made phone calls to get that Greenwald.
I bet he did. I bet he did.
The McCain endorsement of Romney, and we're doing long form, and we're going into investigative journalism, because the things that get shared on the social web are fun, lighthearted, emotional things and scoops. Nobody shares regurgitated SEO type stuff. People share scoops. So that's another 30% of our traffic comes to verticalized, meaty content, not just animals.
Well, we'll see what Google posts tonight after the bell. No offense taken on your comments about our digital work. And next time, bring a cat, okay?
I brought a cat when I did the power pitch segment on the animals. Yeah.
John, it's always good to have you.
Good seeing you. Thanks
really good stuff. Jon Steinberg, of course, President and COO of BuzzFeed. When we come back.